Celebrated poet Elizabeth Acevedo has her brand new book, Inheritance, a visual poem, out in stores today. Congratulations, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Rudy. It's delightful to be in Chicago with you.
So let's talk a little bit about your work. You're a young adult author. This book is going to reach audiences that are a lot younger than that. Does this feel like a full circle moment to be able to reach younger kids?
It really does. I mean, the poem itself is thinking about the future and the hopes that I would have for a future child. And so to know that it's going to be read to and read by children all over really does feel like a full circle.
There are moments in a young kid's life, um, I would assume probably from like three till maybe 6 or 7, where you're starting to discover yourself. And there's things that you love about yourself, and you don't know other people might want to say something, whether it's, you mentioned, fix your hair, but it could be about weight. It could be for an LGBTQ kid about not playing with certain toys or acting a certain way. And it doesn't have to be a lot of comments, but it could be just one that hits you the right way. And let's talk a little bit about, just those comments in general.
Yes, I mean, I think I was an eighth grade English teacher. I have a secondary education in education. And so I try to think a lot about the messages that we pass down to children because they become the stories that they tell themselves. As someone who grew up in a household where people love talking about my weight and pinching my little chichos and la gordita and this, that, and the third, there was a lot I internalized. And I think if we want children to be confident and be able to feel that they have self-love and they have worth and value, we have to be mindful of the stories we tell them because they will become the stories they repeat to themselves.
Because oftentimes you think of how you can change the world within yourself. And sometimes it takes meeting somebody else that you're like, oh, this is my calling in life. And I want to talk a little bit about you being a school teacher and asking a student why they're not reading more and how that ended up changing your whole career.
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky to work in a school that was 78% Latino. They had never had a Latina teacher teaching a core subject. Everybody thought I was a Spanish teacher, even though I was the reading language arts teacher because of my last name. And so these students would file in. And although we were teaching eighth grade, the majority of my students were at fifth and sixth grade reading levels. So they were not really prepared for my course, much less going to high school. And I had this one student that I adored. She was so funny. She was so witty. And she was a self-proclaimed non-reader. Like she would tell me all the time, I'm just not a reader, miss. I'm just not a reader, miss. And I remember asking her one day, what's the kind of book that I could get for you? What would get you excited? And she looked at me and said, I just don't care about sparkly vampires. I'm just not interested in, these big fantasy stories that are becoming movies. Where are the books that look and sound like us? And I went out and I bought Sandra Cisneros and Julia Alvarez and Walter D. Myers, right? All of the legends that are writing about the kinds of neighborhoods that this young woman was from. And within 2 weeks, this kiddo who had told me she was not a reader finished everything I put in front of her. And then she looked at me and said, I miss what's next. Right. And at that point, I was like, that's it. That's the whole teacher budget. That's all the books. Like, I don't have anything more for you. But I think it was those two questions. Where are the books about us? And what's next that really felt like she put, she gave me this onus to be the one to say, why can't I be the kind of writer that my students are looking for?
Oh, exactly. And even like, a little bit off topic, but the movie Encanto that came out last year was seeing the action figures, seeing the clothing, seeing the kids going viral by pointing at the screens, by saying that person looks just like me, and being able to celebrate something that like you didn't realize how many people were left out of all movies because it just took this movie for them to be like, that's me. And, just not only is it a great movie and a great soundtrack, but the message of inclusion.
Rudy, I completely agree. I was out here like, look at Dolores, that's me, right? So I think even adults sometimes feel that recognition, and like I think it heals our inner child, the little selves that didn't have that, and so it feels like these depictions, being able to offer a poem that is illustrated, that shows so many different kinds of images, does feel important because young people are craving it and adults are craving it, and we all want to see representation at a level that tells us that's me and it's well done and it's tender, right? And I think that, hopefully this book, similar to Encanto, will do that for a lot of viewers and readers.
What was a turning point for you personally? Because a lot of times you'll hear comments growing up as a kid or growing up as a teen, and you hold those comments, for a lifetime. And there's a point where you're like, that's not me. I'm not going to let one comment that was told to me 10 years ago or something that I felt that when I didn't feel included in a certain room define who I am. And what was that turning point for you that turned you into the amazing poet that you are today?
Yes. I mean, I think I always strongly believed in my voice. I was lucky to grow up with storytellers. My grandfather had a third grade education. He was from El Campo in the Dominican Republic, but he would tell these amazing riddles he had memorized. And so I was surrounded by oral storytelling. But I will say, as pertains to this book and this idea of my hair, I grew up and I was constantly told to fix it, to straighten it, to do this, that, and the third. It looks like a rat nest. It's a, like, ese pajonudo, like that's a very Dominican word for just like something very, crunchy. And I was constantly being told I needed to straighten it. And I think at some point in high school, I just realized like, I think these people are trying to pass down a message that they've been told, but they've never really thought about. And I don't want to have to do this anymore to feel acceptable, right? And so this idea of using my poetry as a way to talk back, to reply, to say, these aren't the things I might say to my parents yet because I don't have the language, but this is what I'm feeling and thinking about my own development, really began in high school. I had been writing for a long time before that, but I've been writing about what I was seeing. And it was in high school that I began kind of writing what I wish I could say back.
Exactly, because a lot of times it's just an off the cuff comment and you don't realize, I mean, that's just the point that words hurt. And you don't realize just in a quick second of saying something, how that could define somebody's life. But luckily you were able to turn that around and create a platform to help so many other people around the globe. And, congratulations on the brand new book, Inheritance, a visual poem out now. Elizabeth, thank you so much for your time today. There it is. There it is.
Thanks so much, Rudy. Have a wonderful morning in Chicago. It was a pleasure to be here.
Thanks so much.